10. 0.5% of pregnant Americans. Okay, well, some of them may be called Mary, but a long-term study of the reproductive health of American women uncovered the fact that 1 woman in 200 claimed to have given birth without ever having had sex. 7,870 women, aged 15 to 28 were studied, of whom 45 claimed to have had a pregnancy unrelated to the use of assisted reproductive technology. Assisted technology, in this instance, means the assistance of a sperm, as well as more medically assisted measures such as IVF, in order to achieve reproduction. 9. The Civil War bullet baby. The American Civil War was marked by fierce fighting, which often led to life-changing injuries. That was certainly the case for 1 woman.
She lived with her mother and sister in a fine home, only a few hundred yards from the battlefield. The 3 women often stood on their porch, waiting for a pause in the fighting, so that they could do their bit to tend the wounded.
A doctor who rode with the regiment reported seeing a young man shot near the lady's house. He watched as the man fell, and heard a scream from inside the house at the same time. The trajectory of the bullet passed through the soldier's scrotum, taking with it part of his testicle. The doctor dressed his wounds as best he could, and when he was almost finished, the lady of the house ran to fetch the doctor, because the bullet, after exiting the soldier, had, it seems, continued on its path and hit her daughter. So far, so plausible, a small piece of gunshot had penetrated her abdominal cavity. The doctor had time to give her only a cursory examination, before hurrying back to the battle. 8. The Chinese Virgin. In 2019, a woman who had never had a boyfriend gave birth in Guiyang, China. She was brought into hospital with abdominal pains, and, when doctors diagnosed the cause as labor pains, refused to accept the diagnosis because she was a virgin. She had not noticed that she was pregnant, being overweight, as this hid some of the normal bodily changes of pregnant women. She was said to be shocked. When the doctor asked if she might, possibly, have conceived while drunk, she said she was allergic to alcohol and had never touched it. Before she gave permission for a cesarean section, she insisted that doctors carry out a virginity test, which they did, although the results were never made public. 7. The Indian Virgin Revati Borawakar from Ahmednagar, India, suffers from a medical condition which prevents her from having sex. The condition, which causes her vagina to clamp shut when touched, would have stopped her from ever conceiving naturally. Despite trying a number of self-help measures, she and her husband turned to doctors for help when the couple decided they wanted a child. The conception had to be carried out under general anesthetic, but she was able to deliver the child naturally, with the help of an epidural. 6. The French noblewoman. In 1637, Madeleine d'Auvermont gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Which was a bit awkward, since her husband had been away from home for 4 years. The birth caused quite the scandal in 17th-century France. Madeleine's husband was a nobleman, and at stake was her new-born son's right to inherit his father's title and land, as well, of course, as Madeleine's reputation, and in all likelihood, her life. 5. The first kind of case of human parthenogenesis. In 1995, British geneticists reported a case of partial parthenogenesis, the first ever discovered by scientists. True parthenogenesis requires a self-fertilizing female egg. Although mammals can sometimes have eggs which spontaneously divide, they usually develop only so far as to become a benign tumor, called an ovarian teratoma. However, when geneticists studied the blood of a 3-year-old boy, they discovered that his cells contained only XX chromosomes, instead of the expected XY chromosomes that males usually carry. Despite their most sensitive equipment, they were unable to detect any Y chromosomes in his blood. 4. The Italian nun. In 2015, an Italian nun, who had been living in a closed order for 2 years, developed stomach cramps and collapsed at the convent in San Severino. An ambulance was called, and the 31-year-old nun was rushed into the hospital. When doctors told her that she was in labor, she is reported to have said, "I can't be. I'm a nun." Despite this, she gave birth to a healthy boy, who she named Francis, in honor of the Pope. Her fellow sisters were said to be surprised by the news that their sister had become a mother. The local priest, in a display of underwhelming support, said, "I guess she's telling the truth when she says she arrived at the hospital unaware of the pregnancy." 3. The serpent-loving queen. The conception of Alexander the Great is as strange as any Greek myth. The night before her marriage was to be consummated, Olympias dreamt that she had been hit by a thunderbolt, which then started a great fire around her. Her husband, Philip, meanwhile, dreamt, separately, that he had sealed his wife's body up with sealing wax, into which he pressed a seal in the shape of a lion. 2. The IVF virgin sex is no longer a prerequisite for pregnancy, it seems. Since 1978, and the birth of Louise Brown, many couples have successfully had children through IVF, and the process is no longer limited only to couples who are unable to have children naturally. And while many single women opt to try IVF to help them conceive, up until recently, this has usually been after conventional conception has failed. One Sister Josephine Rosenthal. When Sister Josephine Rosenthal fell pregnant in 1742, her fellow nuns at her isolated convent were flummoxed. Their confusion grew when a medical examination declared that, not only was she still a virgin, she was also unable to be with child, although, given her condition, that diagnosis seemed oxymoronic, and possibly not even oxy. Thank you for watching.